Okay, so Payday 3's 13th update has just released, and alongside it, so has the Jacket character pack. Jacket is one of the most highly anticipated returning characters for Payday 3, and the team behind the game are keenly aware of this. So much so that the character pack itself was actually delayed so that it wouldn't be disappointing in any way, citing that at the time, the quality wasn't where it should have been. Taking that into account, the bar for this character pack was set pretty high. This update also sees the addition of the Overskill system, which was described as being somewhat similar to perk decks. So let's see how good the Jacket character pack is and assess how well the Overskill system delivers on its claim to be kind of like the perk decks in Payday 2. We couldn't possibly start with anything other than the Jacket character himself. His outfit has remained pretty much identical to his Payday 2 style, but it just looks so much better running on the new engine. His mask has been updated to give it a slightly angrier tone, also brandishing some new battle damage and general wear and tear, just to let you know that Jacket was certainly up to his old antics in the time between the end of Payday 2 and his return in Payday 3. The mask's new design fits the slightly more realistic tone of Payday 3 compared to the almost blank expression it had back in the previous game. I guess, of course, you could argue that that blank expression his old mask had gave it a sort of lifeless and, dare I say, sociopathic look that fit the characterization of Jacket, though I personally think this new mask looks a great deal better. But as always, at the end of the day, cosmetics come down to personal preference. I did also want to point out just how well Jacket's mask synergizes with a lot of the other outfits in the game. Some of my personal favorite combinations being the Obsidian Glitz, Genteel Cut, and Powerplay suits. You can also buy the Richard Rising mask to be used on any other heister, and it isn't actually a whiteout like the purchasable version of Houston or Clover's masks. The Richard Rising mask comes in full color, and again, goes well with some of the other heisters' default suits. It's good to see Jacket's bandaged up hands when you're in game. He's currently the only heister with unique default gloves, but these are only able to be used with Jacket. As they're part of his default customization and can't be bought through the tailor, they can only be used when you're playing as the Chicken Man himself. Honestly, I wouldn't ever expect them to be added for other heisters, as that would require a bespoke model for each character, unless you want to see Clover running around with Jacket's hands. And that's something that I can't imagine is high on the team's list of priorities right now, and actually, I'd be worried if it was. When it comes to his voice lines, each of his different voice types has a unique flair and charm. I've really enjoyed listening to them as I've been playing, and you can kind of pinpoint what type of media the individual voices have been sourced from, and I think that's quite fun, trying to reverse engineer where Jacket's got these individual lines from. I actually don't see these lines getting too repetitive anytime soon. I think there's enough of them for that not to happen, but of course only time will tell if that's going to be the case. He's also got some pretty good lines on the interaction wheel, and I love when he calls out to other heisters. He'll refer to Hoxton as the British man, or the British Isles, or sometimes even Hoxton Square. He'll also do the same for Dallas, referring to him as just Texas, or other times straight up calling him a criminal mastermind. There is one specific line for Dallas that I particularly enjoyed, where Jacket says Dallas, and then we hear him fast forward through some details about the size of Dallas, Texas. I like that that implies Jacket is constantly scrubbing through his audio files to find the right lines during a heist. And it certainly doesn't end there. He's got some fun lines for marking civilians, guards, cameras, and special enemies as well. This is where we can hear that Jacket actually has lines from a lot more than the 4 sources we initially thought after seeing his reveal trailer. We could hear 4 individual voices in that trailer, and those are his main voices for the interaction wheel, but there are some that are seemingly exclusive to him marking specific things in-game. So overall, I think the Jacket character himself is a tremendously fun addition to the game, and I honestly can't see myself playing as any other heister anytime soon. I think there's literally only 2 heisters that they could bring back that would ever make me stop playing as Jacket. Next up, we have Jacket's preset weapon, the Miami Decadence for the Tribune 32. I mistakenly thought that this weapon preset came with a suppressor, but it turns out that's not the case, so it isn't going to synergize with any assassin builds. Then again, if you're playing as Jacket, it almost feels rude to use a suppressor-based playstyle. The weapon itself looks great and actually comes with the Richard 1989 sticker pre-equipped. As for attachments, it only has the extended mags, but I've got to say, getting up close and personal with this weapon has actually been really fun. I'm guilty of not using the Tribune 32 too much since it came out, but actually I can see myself using it a little bit more going forward. Of course, you don't need to own the Jacket character pack to use the Tribune 32. That was a free edition alongside the Houston Breakout DLC. You just need the pack if you want to use this specific preset. If you don't own the pack, you can just whack extended mags on for yourself and have the same weapon. It'll just look slightly different. I think it is a shame that we aren't getting an entirely original weapon alongside Jacket, and I'm not just saying that because this is a paid DLC. I actually think for the price tag of around $5, you're getting your money's worth with it. It just would have been cool to see a new weapon associated with the new character, and it's something that I really hope we start to see going forward. Well, we do kind of get a new weapon with Jacket, it's just that it comes in the form of the Sociopath Overskill Weapon. But just before we take a look at Jacket's baseball bat, I want to take a quick look at the Letterman Charm and Richard 1989 sticker. There isn't much that I want to say other than I think these both look pretty damn good, and I probably will be using the Letterman Charm every now and again. But of course I wanted to mention them as they are part of the DLC pack, but I thought we should get them out of the way before we talk about the baseball bat, as it would be pretty underwhelming to jump into something as cool as this new weapon and then go back to something like a sticker and a charm. But anyway, the Sociopath Overkill Weapon. Yes, I called it an overkill weapon, not an overskill, because I really think the way the distinction between an overkill weapon and overskill ability has been explained is really poor and confusing. So let's go through this very quickly. Your 3 overkill weapons are the Mamba Grenade Launcher, Red Fox Sniper, and Argus Minigun, and your 2 overskills are the Sociopath Baseball Bat and Interceptor device, even though the baseball bat is also a weapon. Yeah, I did say this gets confusing. On top of that, they can all be found under the overkill weapon category, so in the menus, you have no way to draw a distinction between what is an overkill weapon and an overskill, unless you read the description, where right at the very end, you'll see that overskills are marked as items that replace your overkill weapon. But, and brace yourself because it's about to get a little bit more confusing again, each of these 5 gadgets, regardless of whether they're an overkill weapon or an overskill ability, has an overskill line. Genuinely, I find it so bizarre that this is the way it's being displayed in game and explained to us. Even in the blog post that came out alongside Dev Update 11, it says TLDR, the red bar and the summonable weapons are called overkill, and the skill lines and ability type activatables are called overskill. But by that description, surely the Sociopath Baseball Bat is a weapon that you summon and should be an overkill weapon, not an overskill. I get that they're trying to draw the distinction between an overkill weapon being a weapon that you call in through bile and an overskill being something that is on your heister at all times, but then I don't understand why that isn't how it's been explained to us. I fail to see any logical reason why the baseball bat that you use to inflict damage is not considered a weapon. Perhaps it's just me, maybe this is perfectly clear to everybody else from the first time they hear about it, but for the sake of clarity, I'm choosing to look at this slightly differently. The way I see this is these 5 items are your overkill weapons, each one having an overskill ability and associated overskill line. That's what the UI in-game makes it look like if we divorce ourselves from any of these in-blog explanations. So with that in mind, let's look at the Sociopath Baseball Bat. At its base level, when you first use the baseball bat, you'll pull it straight out from your back. Thankfully, you don't have to wait for bile to drop it off. You'll drop any bag or body that you might be carrying, and you'll be able to use the weapon. You've got a choice between a light or heavy swing, and the heavy swing allows you to take out multiple cops at the same time. You might be able to do this with the light attack as well, but I didn't see this happen while I was playing. While you've got the baseball bat in your hands, any damage that you take is inflicted to your overkill meter instead, and once your overkill meter is completely depleted, you'll put the bat away until you've been able to recharge your overkill meter and can pull it out again. As for its overskill upgrades, each overskill line has 5 tiers. To reach tier 1, you'll need to earn 1,500 XP, tier 2 is 3,500, tier 3, 7,500, tier 4, 11,500, and finally tier 5 is 16,500 XP. And this is the same XP as weapon XP, so to be clear, this isn't infamy points. Sociopath's first upgrade allows you to take 20% less damage if there are more than 3 enemies within 5 meters of you while using the baseball bat. The second upgrade lets you restore 20% of your overkill meter when taking out an enemy with the baseball bat. The third upgrade grants immunity to stagger, stun, slow, disabling effects, and effects that prevent you from sprinting while using the bat. And I've actually just noticed that the word stagger is in there twice, but essentially this one here just makes it so you're immune to any negative status effect that cops can inflict on you. you. Upgrade number 4 means taking out an enemy with the bat will restore 5 HP, and finally, the 5th upgrade makes it so taking out an enemy with the bat causes any enemy within 5 meters of them to enter a panic state and miss all of their shots for the next 5 seconds. Overall, for the first melee weapon in Payday 3, and an overkill one at that, I'm really happy with this weapon. It's immensely entertaining to just pull it out whenever you want and start taking out cops. On paper, this weapon seems like something you could pull out once, and given that its second upgrade allows you to essentially regenerate its durability, use for the rest of the heist. But once you take damage once, your overkill bar will consistently start running down. Of course, you can chain kills together to keep this up and running, but eventually it will run out. In fact, I'm actually gonna share with you my initial reaction to pulling out this overkill weapon for the very first time, because there's another little something that happens that you might not be expecting. Right, Sociopath Overkill Weapon. For the first time, do we have to wait for Bile to drop it in, or do we just pull it out? Let's find out. Oh! We've got it! Oh, the music! Okay. Where are the enemies? Oh my goodness, it's a bit dark, but... Oh my goodness, this is so fun! Okay, this feels really good. This is my first time using it, so a lot of it is probably excitement. Oh, the meter is running down. Okay, I need to find somebody immediately. Somebody, please! Okay. That was cool. The music was fun. That is fully upgraded with all 5 overskill tiers. And I haven't actually used it without any of the overskill tiers, so maybe it's going to be a hell of a lot worse, but I guess we'll have to find that one out on launch day. But that was really good for a first impression. That music, I'm happy. I'm actually really happy with that. Yes, the Sociopath Overkill Weapon comes with its very own little theme tune to get you in the mood while you're bludgeoning the enemies. As an aside, I've got to say how odd it is that this overkill weapon ended up working pretty much exactly how I suggested I would have liked it to work in one of my last videos. I can confirm that at that point I didn't have access to the partner branch and genuinely had no way of knowing that it would end up working like that, but I'm very pleased to see that the Sociopath Overkill Weapon has been handled very well. Just before we talk about the other 4 overkill weapons and their associated overskill lines, including the new Interceptor ability, if you're enjoying the video, consider clicking that subscribe button. We've actually just begun a little challenge of sorts here on the channel. If we can hit 3,000 subscribers before Payday 3's next heist is released, I'll be attempting a challenge run that is suggested by one of you in the comments. I'll be picking the most liked challenge run suggestion as well as the most commonly suggested challenge run and seeing if I can get those done. Honestly, I think 3,000 subscribers is a pretty heavy goal for us to hit before the next heist releases, but I mentioned this goal for the very first time yesterday, and within 24 hours, we've already seen so many more subscribers. So leave a comment with your suggestion for a Payday 3 challenge run, and subscribe if you want to see me give it a go. Anyway, back to it. The Interceptor is the second overkill ability added with this update, and this one is completely free. It's the first stealth overkill weapon, and as such, it isn't actually a weapon. I think this one fits the definition of an overskill ability much more than the baseball bat does, but I digress. The Interceptor allows you to temporarily disable all cameras on a heist. The time that the cameras will be disabled for directly correlates to how much of your overkill meter there is remaining. You can actually activate this ability without a full overkill meter as long as you have at least 25% of it charged up. The only thing that stands out to me as a little bit confusing about this overkill ability is that you can only use it once per heist. I'm sure that this is a balancing decision, but to me, I'm not sure why that is. Its 5 overskill upgrades are as follows. Tier 1 marks all guards and cameras on the map while the Interceptor is active. Tier 2 decreases the rate at which your overkill meter drains by 25%. The third tier acts a little bit like an ECM, stopping all radios from expiring for the duration of the Interceptor's charge. Tier 4 is just an additional 25% that stacks with the Tier 2 ability for a total increased duration of 50%. And the final upgrade essentially acts as a heist-wide glitch protocol, distracting every guard and stopping them from escorting any players out of private areas if they were on their way to arrest a player when the ability was activated. It's nice to finally have an overkill ability tailored specifically for stealth, and I hope we see more of these in the future with different use cases. As for now, I don't actually think the Interceptor overkill ability does anything all that new. Everything it does can already be done, just not heist-wide. You can hack and disable a camera, you can mark cameras and guards, you can distract guards. The Interceptor ability just lets you do this heist-wide to every camera and every guard all at once. This is still very useful, I'm not trying to say that it isn't, but I don't think it brings anything entirely new to the table. Next up, the Mamba grenade launcher. Its overskill causes each grenade to fragment into 4 smaller cluster grenades, each dealing 25% of the original explosion's damage. The first overskill upgrade increases the explosion radius by 20%. The second upgrade makes it so the grenade launcher can no longer damage civilians. The third upgrade grants you 50% increased reload speed. The fourth stops you taking any damage from your own grenades, and the final upgrade permanently reduces the accuracy of any enemy caught within 15 meters of one of the grenade's explosions by 20%. I really believe all of these upgrades are fantastic. They each address one of the main issues with the grenade launcher, and so I can see this being an overskill line that players prioritize unlocking. Inflicting no damage to yourself or civilians, increased explosive radius, increased reload speed, and the ability to permanently reduce enemy accuracy. I think it's all great, and it's made the grenade launcher something that I'm far more likely to take with me into a heist now. I really think you can notice these differences when you're playing. Now for the sniper. The Red Fox's base overskill causes any shot you land to deal damage to enemies within 3 meters of your target, with headshots dealing 60% and body shots dealing 20% of the original shot's damage. So if you hit an enemy, other enemies within 3 meters are gonna take damage as well, and the amount of damage depends on where you hit that initial enemy. As for the overskill upgrades, Tier 1 marks any enemy you're looking at through your scope, though the marking effect will be removed when they leave your line of sight. Tier 2 allows you to penetrate through 4 more surfaces. Tier 3 increases the range of that base skill, which deals extra damage to surrounding enemies, from 3 meters to 5. Tier 4 allows you to penetrate through another 4 additional surfaces. So at that point, if you can see an enemy in your scope, you can hit them. And the final tier upgrades the percentages of that original skill from 20% to 60% for body shots and 60% to 100% for headshots. So to summarize, in case that one got a little bit confusing, by the time you reach your level 5 overskill for the Red Fox sniper, if you land a body shot on an enemy, every enemy within 5 meters will take 60% of that shot's damage. If you land a headshot, each enemy within 5 meters will take the exact same damage as that first enemy you hit. It's important to note that this doesn't bypass armor. So if you hit a standard enemy square in the face that stood next to a dozer, that dozer's going to take that damage to its armor. You're likely to break its armor or maybe its faceplate, but you're not going to be getting that one-shot kill. I think it's really cool to see a graze-like effect return from Payday 2, and it makes the Red Fox sniper rifle feel significantly more powerful. It is so much more satisfying to shoot at a group of enemies and see them all get affected rather than just the one you hit. Our final overkill weapon is the Argus Minigun, and its overskill line focuses on armor. The base ability grants you 1% additional armor damage for every second that you fire the weapon, but decreases this bonus by 1% for each second you aren't firing the weapon. If you discard the minigun or it runs out, the additional damage reduction will be completely removed. Now for the upgrades. Tier 1 grants you an additional 1% armor damage reduction for each enemy you take out. Tier 2 lets you regenerate 1 armor chunk if you have none and reach a 30% bonus with its base ability. So if you fire your minigun for 30 seconds consecutively while you have no armor, you'll get a chunk back. This can only happen once per minigun though, so if you want to trigger this effect again, you'll need to earn a second minigun. The third tier lets you maintain your damage reduction as long as you keep the barrel of the minigun spinning, which you can do by holding down your ADS button. Tier 4 grants you an additional 1% armor damage reduction each time you take out an enemy if you're wearing an armor type with 2 plates or less, or 2% additional damage reduction if you're wearing an armor type with 3 plates or more. And finally, Tier 5 allows you to keep your damage reduction even when you discard the minigun. So if you drop it or it runs out of ammo, your armor damage reduction that you've built up will stay and simply decrease at the standard rate of 1% per second. So essentially, the Minigun's Overskill line rewards you for playing aggressively and keeping up your rate of fire with extra damage reduction. I think it's relatively simple to play with, but it works. The only one thing that I would change is that I would allow your armor to be regenerated regardless of how many plates you have. If you ask me, I don't think that it's essential. This benefit is only applied if you have no armor, but at the end of the day, that's only a minor criticism. Wow, that Overskill system takes a while to explain, but all in all, I think it breathes a little bit more life into the Overkill weapons as they currently are, and I'm really happy with how this has been executed. I don't think it lives up to the legacy of perk decks as much as some of us might have hoped, but for now, I'm really happy with this system. There aren't many other major changes in this update besides for the loadout screen being tweaked slightly. There are no longer separate tabs for loadout and appearance, instead it's now all on one screen, which I think makes for a much more streamlined customization process. Not to mention, it's also just nice to see that there are still UI improvements being made. That wasn't a promise that was forgotten about. You might have spotted this little loading bar as well when you start up the game. It isn't much, but it's nice to have some sort of feedback that the game is actually loading, especially after launch. Of course, we have a new set of Valentine's Day themed Twitch drops that have gone live alongside this update, and you'll be able to catch me and a bunch of other fantastic Payday content creators streaming live later on today. In fact, there's probably somebody live right now, so go over and say hi. One final thing I wanted to touch on today was whether or not I think the jacket character pack is worth it. Firstly, don't let anybody tell you how to spend your money. And as I said in my last video, also don't buy this DLC simply out of fear of what it underperforming could mean for the future of Payday 3. For me though, I think this pack definitely includes enough to justify its price tag of $5. Even if you aren't going to buy the pack, I'd still recommend checking out the new Overskill system. That's definitely something worth booting up the game for. And for those of you on PlayStation who might not even own Payday 3 yet, as of tomorrow, you'll be able to pick up the game as part of your PS Plus membership. It's going to be available from the 4th of February for about a month, and if you get the game during this free period, you'll be able to keep it. So even if Payday 3 isn't up to your standards just yet, you might as well at least pick it up to save yourself having to buy it later down the line. There were a few things that I thought it was important to discuss before the release of this jacket character pack, and if you haven't seen my last video, you can click through to that on screen now. I really think the topics we speak about in that video are important to bear in mind going forward. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.